Hello, welcome back to the Out of the Park Developments YouTube channel. My name is Alex Murray, also known as AZ Excellent. Today we are doing our last OOTP 22 Intros Guide to OOTP 22 tutorial. It's going to be all about personnel, how to find the right ones, and also staff roles, and what that means for you as a GM or as a manager in OOTP 22. So if you get your games open, let's go ahead and get on in. And let's take a look at this last tutorial of the series. So, as you can see, I already have the personnel page open. I actually need to get over to my other page here. We got to see our personnel page. So we'll head back over to our front office and go to personnel right here. And this is where we're going to begin. Now, I have gone ahead and actually fired a whole bunch of our staff because I looked at them and I realized they weren't good enough. I'm not going to blame them for us not getting to the World Series, but me and Alex Anthopoulos had a long conversation about wanting to go deeper into playoffs. And we did go pretty well in 2021, but I think we can do better. I think we can do a whole lot better. So we're going to take you guys through what I would go through in terms of hiring every single one of these vacant positions for the major leagues. And this will apply across all of the minor leagues as well. Every single time we talk about either a manager, which in this case is going to be a bench coach, a hitting coach, or a pitching coach, it'll all be the same results for minors. All right? So let's first jump straight in with what the bench coach is and what's important about bench coaches. All right? Bench coaches are going to be all about keeping the clubhouse moving well. If you are the manager or the GM and manager and you don't need to have a manager on your team, if you are basically acting as the manager, then your bench coach's job is to do a couple different things. The first thing that they're going to be doing is making sure that the, of course, I changed it last second. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. You're looking for relationships. This is how well the bench coach is going to be able to handle the players that are on your major league team. And the way you can find that out is by having your current opportunity be exactly what your vacant position is. If you click on your vacant little text right here, you can see it highlights. That brings up the current opportunity as bench coach. It filters the list of personnel to just the bench coach for MLB. Now, I'm going to go to all personnel because I don't want just the free agent personnel. I want personnel that are also potentially on other minor league squads. We might be able to snag a coach from another team. That would be a much better upgrade than any of the free agent personnel that are out there. So I've gone ahead and you can see I've shortlisted some people that are pretty good. Now, again, bench coaches need to have good working relationships because at the end of the day, by the time your prospects are hitting the major leagues, they are mostly developed, which means that the development ability of your major league bench coach is not going to be as important. Now, if you're bringing people up who still have development left, then it will be important. So my advice is don't skimp on this, but don't make this be the most important category for your bench coach, okay? Your ability to influence mechanics, which is your talent changes, that would be somewhat important, but that's more important for your minor league managers, okay? Being able to handle development and your influencing on mechanics is much more important for your minor league managers. So get high mechanics and high development for your minor leagues. So Bruce Bochy, hire him for your minor leagues. Socia, Showalter, Farrell, hire them for your minor leagues if you can do it. Now, some of them will not accept a minor league deal. As you can see, none of them would accept our rookie ball system, but maybe they would accept AAA. Maybe they would accept something that's a little bit higher on the list. If we could ask Bochy, would he even think about going to be a AAA manager? He has no interest. Okay. So some of them will, some of them won't. And it depends also on when you ask them, because sometimes as you get closer to the regular season, they will be more okay with going to a position that's less at a higher tier than the major leagues if there's not enough time or if it's just at a point where they are the last chance for the season to acquire a job. All right? So be shrewd on when you go about looking for your staff, as well as knowing what to look for. All right? Now, here are the important things for your bench coach for the majors. You need to have relationships as good as possible. They need to be able to handle aging, because your players are going to start aging, and this is going to be able to keep them from just nosediving, okay? So if your manager or your bench coach, if you're not managing, you have a manager and a bench coach, if either of them or both of them have really bad handling of aging, all of your veteran players are not going to handle themselves well as they get older and start to free fall, all right? So if you've got an aging dynasty team, you want to handle aging as high as you possibly can. If you're rebuilding and you have a really young team, make sure that your handling of development is as high as possible. If you can get lucky, get both. For example, Bruce Bochy has a good reputation with players, good reputation isn't as important as the relationships. He's got a fair relationship, which is not bad, but you can see he has poor relationships with a lot of players that would be important to us as an organization. And some of these people, like Acuna Jr., are going to be here for a long time. And it might actually cause chemistry problems with Bochy and Acuna. And Acuna might not sign an extension down the road if Bochy is still coaching. I'm dead serious. It would be easier for us to get Brent here and see if his relationships, are a lot better. In fact, it's an excellent relationship with Freeman, Albies, Riley, and Acuna Jr., our main squad of hitters. So if we wanted to get somebody who is going to work well with our players and be able to help us keep them from aging and being able to do a good job with them, technically he won't be as good on the mechanics, but the development and the handling of aging is very good for this particular bench coach. Now, one thing to note, your bench coach will also be a part of the staff roles. That is the teaching of catching, infield defense, outfield defense, and running. Now, your first base and third base coach are also going to be utilized for these 4 different categories, but you want to make sure that whoever you get as your bench coach has at least 1 or 2 of these as good as they can possibly get. So, for example, Brent has outstanding on the infield defense and outfield defense. So he's a perfect mixture of good managing skills and good teaching skills. So he's perfect for us. We're going to offer him a contract to be our bench coach on the Major League team. And he wants 3 years for about $300,000, and that's perfect. So we'll go ahead and offer him that position. For pitching coaches, you want to make sure that the teach pitching is as good as you can possibly get it, okay? The relationships are also going to be important, but not as important as teach pitching. You can also look for stuff like mechanics if you want them to be able to make sure they don't have major changes to their pitching abilities if it's a prospect. And again, handling of aging is going to be important too, but the teach pitching is the number 1 category. If this is as good as it can possibly be, you're going to have the best possible success. So we might actually hire someone like, I have listed here John Farrell, Matthew Johnson's pretty good. It might be Matthew Johnson. Let me see how his relationships look. He's not good with a lot of our important people. What about Miguel? Miguel's not too bad. He likes Will Smith, and Will Smith likes him, but not entirely the best situation in the world. Wow, Bryce Benz is all over the place. Not sure about that. He might be better for a minor league position. Righetti has got a little bit better. He likes a couple of our other pitchers that's a little bit better on our listings. This might fly. Rick Adair might be a good enough one for us to go with. We've already offered Brent an offer for the bench coach position, so that's not going to work, unfortunately. And Righetti, we just have some very poor relationship problems, unfortunately. So let's look at it by relationships really fast. And let's see what the best one out there for that is. So if we could dip down into the excellent category, not legendary, not outstanding, Bruce Billings might be our best option. So if you can't find the best of both worlds, you might have to rely on someone like Bruce Billings. So we will actually go ahead, but I don't like his development, mechanics, and aging. See, this is where it gets really difficult trying to find somebody who's good at everything that you need. And this is where it gets into a little bit of a problem, because decent's not great. He has good development. good relationships. But again, I would like to have someone who's a little bit better at some of these other categories if I could get one. Scott Austin. Now, this is a good coach right here. Influencing the mechanics and aging is good. Development is only decent, but that's okay. We have most of our people already developed. He's legendary on the catching of defense, infield, outfield, and running. And legendary and outstanding. So he really should be our first base coach. And he's only good on teach pitching. So we're actually going to give him our first base coach position. Little tip. You can always hire someone to be a first base coach or a third base coach and then either promote them internally down the road to be either your bench coach, your manager, or a hitting coach or a pitching coach. So for example, right here, we could take Scott and say a year later or 2 years or 3 years down the road, hey, you've been offered a contract by somebody else to be their hitting coach. We'll give you our hitting coach position instead and just promote him straight to it because of all of his abilities. He's a good coach to have on your team, regardless of where he plays. All right? So you can put people into the first base, third base coach positions and basically kind of hoard them from the rest of the league. All right? That is a possibility. Now, I'm looking at this and I'm realizing that at this point, I'm going to give up the relationships for the teaching and the ability to handle mechanics and development. At this point, it's okay. I'll take the poor relationships. We have a good chemistry on our team. That hasn't been a problem. I know it could cause problems down the road, but I love what this coach brings in terms of his abilities. I'm going to offer him our pitching coach contract for about $1 million for 4 years every single year. That's a lot of money, but it's worth it. So we've offered a pitching coach, a first base coach, and a bench coach position. So hitting is going to be basically the same thing as a pitching coach. Everything comes down to their teach hitting ability. You're hoping for something like this, where there's average reputation, the relationship was average, you don't have any hitters on the bad part, and only good on the top part. So that's perfect right there. And then, of course, handling of development, mechanics, aging, good, teaching hitting, legendary. We want this hitting coach. He wants only about $500,000. We'll give him that money right about there. Now, let's go ahead and do our third base coach. And again, this is basically the 4 ending ones down here. We want to teach running, teach outfield, teach infield, and teach catching. Now, I found that teaching running is almost one of the hardest ones to get. We've given Scott Austin the option to be our first base coach, so that's good right there. Let's target the other ones and see what we can get. So we've got Rod Barajas, who is an excellent relationships guy as well. We can probably keep him, and if we wanted to, we could probably put him into a manager's position down in the minors down the road if we wanted to. Same with Alan Trammell. That would also be a good option. I'm going to give it to Barajas. Third base coach for, only about $250,000 for 3 years. That's perfectly fine. Let's talk about team trainers. When you look at your trainers, what you're looking for is what your priority is going to be. There's a lot of different categories, and if we just pop into one of these guys, you can see they have a trainer focus, which is going to be either recovery, balanced, or prevention. And this is going to be all about what they do. Either the rehab, which is recovery, is their priority, and that's what they're going to focus on. So you can see he's a legendary, rehabbing other injuries and leg injuries, not so good on the arm injuries and back injuries, or they're focused on preventing. But as you can see, he's inexperienced on arm injuries, preventing arm injuries. That's a huge problem for pitcher staffs. If you've got a guy who doesn't prevent arm injuries that well and your pitcher blows out an elbow, a ligament, that's Tommy John surgery. That's a big issue. So inexperienced means that there isn't enough data to show exactly how good he is. Now, I don't think he would be terrible. I think if he gets some experience, I think he can get better, unless that's considered unknown. I don't remember now. I'd have to look that up again. I think, no, poor is when it's bad. You don't want poor. Inexperienced is not as big of a problem if you can take that. That wouldn't be the end of the world. Although it says poor there, so I guess you wouldn't want to go for that. Basically, if it's in the red, you'd probably want to stay away from it. I think there is one category that's red because it's unknown. Basically, it hasn't been even worked on yet. It would be like as if you would train them on it, but I don't remember seeing ever where trainers got better over time. So you really just want to get the best you possibly can. Don't risk it, especially with something like a prevent arm injuries. That's a huge one. So we won't be going after Mike because preventing arms is hugely important for us. Rick Jameson is by far one of the best trainers in the game right now. He has a lot of prevention. He's prevention focused. He's outstanding on fatigue recovery, and he's perfect for us. So we will offer him our team trainer contract. Now, last but not least, we're going to talk about the scouting director. For scouting directors, this is where, and I think we've talked about this a little bit with your scout when we did our scouting video. Basically, you're looking for somebody who's going to prioritize what your team needs at the moment in terms of scouting. Now, you can always just try to find somebody who is outstanding on every single category. You know, you've got John here who is outstanding in almost every single category as a scout. Outstanding, excellent, outstanding, and outstanding. And that's fine. And he's neutral. So he's not going to favor one direction or the other in terms of tools or abilities. And that's perfectly fine. That's a great way to be able to go with a scout. As I mentioned in our scouting little topic video I did about that, tools and abilities are not a good and bad scale. They are a preference scale, and that's going to depend entirely on what you, as the player of the game, want out of your scout, all right? So, for our situation, we're going to go with Gene. Because of two different reasons. One, he's 48 years of age. So he's not older like the rest of the people in this list are. So, for example, John is 52 and Jeff is 60. And that can become a bit of a problem when you have older scouts and they might retire down the road. You want to make sure that they don't have problems of just going off your team because they're finished playing baseball as a head scout. All right? Now, you might look at this person and say, well, Alex, you've got him only being good on international or on scouting amateurs. That's not that great. That's fine for us as an organization because right now we are in dynasty mode for the Atlanta Braves. And that means that scouting amateurs or first-year players is not going to be our priority for the next 4 or 5 years, which means that we would prefer to have our scout be good at scouting the major leagues, the minor leagues, and the international scouting where we have a better chance of acquiring top-tier quality players, all right? So for us, Gene is a perfect example of someone who's young enough to stay with us for a long amount of time. He favors ability slightly, so that's okay, and he gives us exactly what we want out of a scouting director, and he only wants $765,000 for 4 years. So we will offer him that, and that is all of our personnel at least asked for and offered contracts. So we'll go ahead and simulate up to the time where all of them have signed, at least our first base and third base coach, and I'll tell you guys about this page, which is staff roles. All right, we are back, and as you can see, all of our coaches have officially signed with us. We got both our bench coach, pitching coach, hitting coach, first base, and third base coach, our scouting director, and our new team trainer. And as you can see, some of them do not have the best reputation in the world, but we know that their skill is very good. Now, the one thing we didn't actually talk about, and I probably should have, is that all of the staff here have personalities, and they work well with, and they don't work well with certain types of personalities. As you can see, there are some issues potentially with some of our players. Now, it seems pretty easy because at this point it's not too bad. You know, our assistant GM does not like Cookson and Barajas that much, which is a bit of a shame because Cookson's pretty good. But, you know, our pitching coach, Matthew Johnson, has no problems with any of our pitching or our staff, and neither does our team trainer, so that's good. We don't have a whole lot of major headbutting going on. There's just a couple, but that's okay. That's okay. Now, as you can see, our staff cohesion right now is ecstatic. Now, this is going to kind of reset now that we've gotten a brand new coaching staff and we start the new season, but our previous coaching staff was ecstatic, and I actually think this is actually updated already, I think. It should be all ecstatic because they work really well with each other. You can see multiple people work well with other people on the list, and that's just good. That's a good thing for us to see. Now, you can see on the left side we have our teaching roles, and those are the 4 I talked about earlier. Now, your first base, third base coaches and your bench coach are the only 3 people that can be used to fill these positions. So you can see our bench coach, first base coach, and third base coach. Now you can always just hit Ask AI to set the roles, and boom, it's done. Barajas would end up doing our teaching of catching, which seems appropriate for him to an extent. Brent Cookson, our bench coach, does teaching infield, and then Scott Austin does our outfield and teaching of running. And that's perfect, because that means that if we have to teach somebody how to do one of those different things, we will do it faster, because we have coaches that know how to do that properly. In fact, they're almost all legendary at being able to do that. Now, you can do more on this page. I'm not going to talk about that in this deep dive video. We'll do that later in a bigger deep dive video, because there's a whole lot more to stuff like the personalities, hiring coaches, and being able to see what would be a good fit. If we had a blank offer, you would actually see some offers down here of what the AI recommended for you to acquire with your other coaching staff. So the AI will actually tell you who it believes would be your best pick for certain things, and there's a whole bunch more about that later. But for now, guys, that is the basic information about your personnel, who to acquire, what to look for, and then, of course, your staff roles to be able to get the best possible personnel for your team. I will simulate this season and end our tutorial series with one last review of how our team does with the redone personnel, the changes we made through all of these tutorial lists, and we'll try to win the World Series in our next final tutorial video. But otherwise, guys, I will see you guys in our next final tutorial. So this today was our penultimate one, and then that will finish our tutorials playlist for the intros guide to OOTP 22. I will see you all later. It didn't go well.